Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a perfectly adequate show for you today on this Tuesday morning, and we're going to get right to it.
Was it perfectly adequate when you got attacked by those bugs last night, or did that not happen? If you missed it yesterday, Robby's been seeing these, invasive lantern flies? Yes.
They're everywhere.
Did it happen again last night?
No. The perfectly adequate thing is a loving reference to my old co-host Ryan Grimm, who would kick off the show. He was most stern, no-nonsense person.
More than you.
Yes, right. I'm Dr. Chuckles compared to him.
Okay, got it. Well, coming up on Rising, I'll be discussing how Congressman Thomas Massie may have an idea as to why those Epstein files are being guarded so closely.
Plus, the Trump administration has started its illegal immigration crackdown in the city of Chicago.
And there seems to be a divide among male Trump voters and female Harris voters on things like having children and focusing on your career. But first, Robby, what's on your radar?
Let's get to it. Well, the national mainstream media is finally paying some attention to the brutal murder of Iryna Zarutska, 23-year-old woman who escaped war-torn Ukraine only to be stabbed to death on public transportation in Charlotte, North Carolina last month. Now, the alleged killer, DeCarlos Brown, is a schizophrenic man who had been arrested 14 times, previously incarcerated for 5 years. The horrifying attack was captured on surveillance camera. Now, in the footage, Brown can be seen sitting behind Zarutska, and he stands up, and without warning or provocation, he stabs her repeatedly in the neck, killing her. The footage was shared widely on social media, where it drew significant interest, horror, and shock for many people, including many conservative commentators who see this incident as an example of the violent crime problem in predominantly blue cities. It's also an example of the media's double standard. There's no way around it. When Daniel Penny, a white former Marine, intervened on a subway train in New York City to stop a mentally ill black man, Jordan Neely, who was threatening commuters and had previously assaulted 3 women on the subway and accidentally killed him while restraining him in a chokehold, well, this became a major national news story. It was covered relentlessly by the media. It sparked widespread protesting among left-wing progressive activists. It was a big deal. Penny, by the way, was eventually acquitted of manslaughter. Many of his fellow passengers testified at his trial that Neely was threatening them, and they were relieved that Penny had the courage to act. Unfortunately, no one on the train with Iryna Zarutska could have prevented DeCarlos Brown from suddenly and without any warning viciously attacking and killing her. The ability to protect the public from DeCarlos Brown ended when he was released back onto the streets. More on that in a minute. Now, this murder took place more than 2 weeks ago and occasioned zero national news coverage at the time, even though it's a very similar, though completely reversed situation from the Daniel Penny case. But now conservatives are talking about it, and President Trump has weighed in, and the mainstream media has been cajoled into covering it. And you can guess exactly what they are saying. We are going with a textbook conservatives pounced framing, in which the story is not the story itself. The story is that conservative people care about the story. Cue Axios, which describes the story thus, quote, "The gruesome video of the fatal knife attack on Iryna Zarutska on a light rail car in Charlotte is drawing attention from MAGA influencers seeking to elevate the issue of violent urban crime and accuse mainstream media of undercovering shocking cases. Their headline, stabbing video fuels MAGA's crime message." The tone is one of feeling inconvenienced. It's so annoying that conservatives are pointing out that people have been murdered. Seriously. Here was CNN's Brian Stelter, focusing on what he finds vexing about the story.
I have to say, some of the replies to Musk, some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping. But there are also legitimate questions about this so-called career criminal, someone who had been a repeat offender. And those questions, I hope they're not lost amid all of the cesspool kind of comments on social media.
Yeah, legitimate questions indeed. Now, I don't think random online trolls making racially offensive comments is the most important part of this story, so let's kick off that larger conversation on what went wrong here. Now, thankfully, local reporters Joe Bruno and Hunt Sains did some terrific reporting, actually interviewed the mother of the suspect. According to Bruno, Brown's mother is, quote, "not making excuses for her son. She says what he did was atrocious, it was horrible, and it was wrong. The point of her speaking isn't to make her son out to be a victim. He's not. She says she just wanted to speak about the arrest to highlight how the system failed and things got to this point." So here's some relevant information from her. the mother. Brown was arrested 14 times for a variety of offenses and was sentenced to 5 years in prison for armed robbery. He served that time and then was released. Now, afterward, he returned home to live with his mother, who reports he was unstable and psychotic. She actually had him involuntarily committed, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. But after 2 weeks, the courts released him. She refused to let him return home. He became homeless. He began making crazy and erroneous calls to 911 and had subsequent interactions with the police in which they did attempt to get him to use mental health resources. Unfortunately, voluntary mental health treatments are not going to keep a determined psychotic person off the streets. Now, reacting to the murder, North Carolina Governor Josh Stein, a Democrat, writes on X, "I am heartbroken for the family of Iryna Zarutska, who lost their loved one to this senseless act of violence, and I'm appalled by the footage of her murder. We need more cops on the beat to keep people safe. That's why my budget calls for more funding to hire more well-trained police officers. I call upon the legislature to pass my law enforcement recruitment and retention package to address vacancies in our state and local agencies so they can stop these horrific crimes and hold violent criminals accountable." Okay, but the problem here is not actually a lack of beat cops, unless when he says he wants to pay for more police, what he wants is more policing of who gets to use public transportation. Unsurprisingly, Brown was a fare evader. He had not paid to be on the train, and he'd not paid to be on the bus that he took to the train. So what this case really highlights, in my view, is the need for, unfortunately, coercive mental health options. And it breaks my libertarian heart to say it, but it's true. We need to keep dangerous, mentally ill people locked up. If not in prison, then at least in an institution where they can't hurt themselves and they can't hurt innocent bystanders. Let's get serious.
Look, I agree with you. This story should have been covered. I think it was horrific what happened. And I think when you think about somebody who has 14 previous offenses, some of them include like dangerous weapon use, robbery and other things, I was kind of just shocked that this can happen. I still do think that this is a local issue for local police, you know, the governor, the mayor to deal with. I think crime in urban areas is an issue, point blank. I don't think that I never said that it wasn't, but I do think that it requires, if it's going to use federal assistance, like let's say in Chicago, where we have a laser focus on, which is why I believe that, I can't speak for the Axios reporter, but why they probably try to connect the dots of highlighting crime. I mean, Republicans have largely been the party of law and order for decades, since Reagan pretty much, and that's what they quoted themselves as, so they're going to always push crime issues, so it is beneficial to make sure they're keeping hyper-focused on it. It's a winning issue for them, but this is not the time. I never like to play politics around somebody dying. You know, it's never the time to talk about that. I think there really is reform that's needed, whether it's cops. I mean, I grew up in New York, so whether it's cops in the subway, it matters. If there's fare hoppers, there's usually cops right at each station. They'll catch you, and then they'll see. But continuing to arrest this man who's psychotic, like you said, does not solve the root of the issue. So when you think about real meaningful change, to me, it requires local and federal government to come together. And what programs actually will help people that are repeat offenders and also have mental health issues to stay off the street? Because his mom didn't want him there.
Right, and she did what she did the responsible thing. My biggest pet peeve is when there's a mass shooter or a killer or something violent happens. We go, oh, why didn't anyone say anything? And then we find out that the family did say something, that they reported to law enforcement repeatedly. She had him committed for as long as she possibly could, but at some point a judge or a court said, this violent schizophrenic man who's been in prison and been arrested 14 times, who has schizophrenia, who has a history with weapons, this person, we're not going to keep them. Again, it doesn't have to be prison. We're not going to keep them in an institution. That's crazy to me. We need to expect better from the coercive part of the system to actually keep dangerous people. I'm not saying it needs to be prison. It needs to be something other than the streets, because this is unsafe for people, for judges to decide that, oh yeah, this person, we'll just turn them loose again. If it's just mental health resources and there's no coercion part of it, it's not, these people can't help themselves in their this serious a mental health position. They can't just say, oh, I'm going to go decide to get better. They need to be kept somewhere, given antipsychotic medication, and then we'll see. But unless you're willing to do that, you're going to have more of these problems.
I think that the conversation should be more about solutions. So if there are libertarians, Republicans, or Democrats with real solutions, because we haven't found any to solve crime in major cities all over the country. Yeah. So if anybody has real solutions, and to me, federalizing cities is not then I'm all ears. I think that's the number one thing we need to
Rooms
start
with
here.
padded walls. I mean, honestly,
Just put everyone.
Not everyone, but schizophrenic people. Yeah, I've said this before. I loved One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as a kid. It was one of my favorite books. But I think it's had a damaging effect on how we view the institutionalization of mentally ill people. There are some violently mentally ill people who just need to be kept off our streets, or we don't have civilization at all, and we're going to have to be overly policed, and we don't want that either. All right, next up, President Trump is following through on his promise to make Chicago ICE's next target, and we'll discuss that and probably debate it. Stay with us.